Dachau, factory of horrors. Dachau, near München, one of the oldest of the Nazi prison camps. It is known that from 1941 to 1944, up to 30,000 people were entombed here at one time, and 30,000 were present when the Allies reached Dachau. The Nazis said it was a prison for political dissenters, habitual criminals, and religious enthusiasts. When these scenes were filmed, over 1,600 priests, representing many denominations, still remained alive. They came from Germany, Poland, Czechoslovakia, France, and Holland.
We get out, I guess, about 3 miles out of the town of Dachau, and we start smelling the worst stink you ever smelled in all your life. It was nauseating. Now, that's just, you know, I have smelled death. Death is nauseating in the first place, but the smell of it, the stench of it. But this was even stronger than that. And we couldn't figure out what was going on. What that stink was. And we got, the column stopped, and we looked out there, and there was boxcars, and they were lined up. I don't know how many, just hundreds and hundreds of boxcars lined up on, and then we see some bodies down on the sides of them. And we said, so my battery commander stops that part of the, right there, and he says, and he gives us details. I'm a sergeant, so he gives me about eight men, something like that. And we go through those, and he wants us to find out if there's anybody alive in those boxcars, because we see people dead down on the ground, you know. And some of the boxcars were open, some of them were closed. And some of them was these open type, you know, like a, and we see they were piled up with bodies. And the others were this type that had these doors on it, you know, regular boxcars. And we went in there and we broke it loose. They were you know, the ones that were locked, they were chained with locks, and we just shot the locks off and opened it. And the stink and the smell was something terrible. I mean, it just, what we did, we put on gas masks, which didn't help a whole lot, but it did help some. And we saw bodies piled up in there like cattle, just I mean, just one on top of the other. And I didn't know, you know, we didn't know they were dead and any live in there. They couldn't have been live, you know what I mean? But, you know, every now and then you'd come across one of them that the eyes are rolled or something, you know, and we'd say maybe he's still alive. So we'd get him out. And in the process of it, we'd pick up one, you know, by the arms and the legs, and some of them were so decomposed that the arms would drop off or the legs would drop off on you. And you just have to pick up the rest of them, just throw them off on the side. Well, you're getting all this gook on you. The smell is terrible. We are throwing up all over the place. I mean, there's no way to explain how something like that could happen. There's just no way. And we got everybody we could out of there. I guess there's around 10 to 12 boxcars I went through. We got maybe 1, 2 that might have been alive.
Incoming prison trains arrived, carrying more dead than living. Those strong enough to travel were brought to Dachau from outlying points which were threatened by the Allied advance. This is how they looked when they arrived.
Then we went, after that, we got in our vehicles and went into the camp. And the first thing we noticed was coming through the gates were opened, by the way. There were other troops in there. American troops or some other troops was in there. They were still sniping, you know. We could hear, he'd come right past you, you know. And we went on through the camp there. We got into the camp, and the first thing I see is a bunch of these look like German officers or German soldiers, and they were all tore apart. I mean, just eyes were gouged out, and their mouths were gouged out, and they just. And I asked, see, now I didn't explain. I'm of Jewish descent. I don't know if you knew that, and I could speak a little Yiddish. So Yiddish is very much like German. Germans can understand Yiddish, and I can understand German. And I asked one of the inmates. Now, inmates there was some of them that were absolutely, they were sitting down, and they were more dead than alive. I mean, they were nothing but skin and bones. Their cheeks were just, I mean, you couldn't tell. Some of them were just like this here, you know. We didn't know if they were sleeping or dead or what.
These are the survivors.
But we did get enough of them around to take us around. And we asked them about what these, and what had happened is, they said that when the inmates had got word that the Americans were on their way, they jumped these guards and literally tore them apart by hand. Now that's what I was told. And then we went on in. They took us to one of the barracks, and it's a one-story building, long, you know, and there was still people in there. There were inmates in there, and most of them were so weak they couldn't get out of the bed. The beds were just wood frames with, and no mattress. I couldn't see no mattress there. and they were piled one on top of the other. It looked like about 4 or 5 high. You know, one just enough room to crawl in. And they were sticking their heads out, and, you know, some of them were so weak they couldn't even move. And we went in, and I asked them, I says, you know, what are you sleeping on? And they said, nothing, you know, nothing there. And we tried to feed them. They had no food or anything, and we tried to feed them. We had some of these C rations with us, you know, these cans of corned beef and stuff like that, and they couldn't eat it. Their stomachs were shrunk so bad they couldn't eat it. So we took water. We took 5-gallon cans of water off our vehicles, and we brought that water in there, and we mixed that C ration and made a soup out of it, and they couldn't hardly eat that. They told me they were boiling roots out of the ground, and they had a few turnips that they'd got someplace, and were making soup out of that, and that's all they had to eat. And we left them. There was bins in there, and they had suitcases in one bin, and another bin they had. They had one of them that I didn't know what it was, and I asked them, and what they did, they saved the hair. They shaved all the hair off of them before they sent them into the furnaces, and they had that hair into containers, big old containers there, and that's what it was. It was hair, and I found out later on they made mattresses out of that, and they had false teeth. They'd gouge if they had any gold, they'd gouge the gold out.
Hanging in orderly rows were the clothes of prisoners who had been suffocated in a lethal gas chamber. They had been persuaded to remove their clothing under the pretext of taking a shower, for which towels and soap were provided.
Tell you, when we went back, you see, we was only there for one day. We went there in the morning and the evening, and we left. And we bivouacked outside the camp. And we could not, truthfully, we could not conceive that humans could be in that shape, and that other people could let them get into that shape and make them that shape. It was something that you just could not, there's no way of explaining it. We'd talk about it, and say, how could God's name could that happen? We couldn't believe it. But there it was, right in front of us. Yeah, I have dreams and I have nightmares even now.
And when the rescuers arrived, they administered what aid they could. Others died after the liberation. They were buried by their fellow prisoners.
Yes, there were German soldiers there, but I'm going to tell you, I'd see these things and I'd get so mad that I'd want to shoot every damn German I could find. Yes, then you go to we went with our battery commander, since I could talk a little Yiddish, and so I went back to Dachau, the town of Dachau, and we asked, do you know what was going on at that camp? No, we didn't know. And I'd look at him and I'd say, you goddamn liar. I says, you, what is all that smoke? What is the stink that I smell right here now? I says, you knew what was going on. And the battery commander, he really blew his top. And he made every one of those. He got those people, and we got weapons, and we made them all go through, even carry kids with them, go through that camp and see what the heck was going on. We took them through there. And all they'd say is, oh, what could we do? What could we do? What could we do? That's all we could get out of them.
As in the case of other camps, local townspeople were brought in to view the dead at Dachau. This is what the liberators found inside the buildings.
You see, I can understand. You know, I've got a poem that explains how the people could get into a shape like they were, where they were completely slaves. We went into a building, and we was using it as a CP. And we chased everybody out of it that was living in it. There was only women there. We chased them out and told them go live with somebody else until we move, until we get out of there. And there was a typewriter. It was in the corner, and I pulled out the paper out of it, and I put it in my pocket. And about a week later, I pulled it out. Now, you know, everybody says, well, man, you wore those clothes a week. Sometimes we wore it longer than that. Combat, you don't change clothes. And I took that out, and it's a poem, and it's in broken English. And I got it with me today. I got that poem today. And it says that we've been enslaved in our very own. In other words, they got into a situation where they got a few little nickels in there, a little cash in their pockets, but they lost all their freedom. Every bit of freedom they had, they lost. Well, yeah, there were some of them that broke down and cried and because I mean, you know, they saw this inhuman things laying there, and yeah, some of them broke down, but the majority of them, believe it or not, was smug, and we didn't know what was going on. No, I'd say the majority of them had that attitude. And we found out later on, they even had these inmates working into a factory right outside of, right close to Dachau, the city, right there. They'd take them out and work in that factory. And they'd work them until they died. They wouldn't feed them, they wouldn't give them water, they'd just work them until they completely fell down dead. Now, this is the way those people are. Now, you might not think I'm telling the truth, but this is absolutely what I saw. And God knows if I'd ever been captured, I had right on me my dog tags, and it says Jewish right on there. I know what had happened to me. I wouldn't be here today.
This is the Brausbad, the shower bath. Inside the shower bath, the gas vents. On the ceiling, the dummy shower heads. In the engineer's room, the intake and outlet pipes. Push buttons to control inflow and outtake of gas. A hand valve to regulate pressure. Cyanide powder was used to generate the lethal smoke. From the gas chamber, the bodies were removed to the crematory. Here is what the camera crew found inside.